town hall event that is sponsored by Rockford Forward tonight. The format, I'm Neil Blakesley, I think everybody knows that. See all familiar faces. The format is each of the candidates will be given first 5 minutes to present their ideas and qualifications and why they want to run for Rockford City Council. After that, we have a series of candidates, questions that will be asked, the same question for every candidate. We did receive a couple mail-in candidates that were specific to the individual candidates. We don't believe that's appropriate. It's not something that's for the whole group. We're just dealing with questions that are appropriate for everyone to have an answer. So, and I think there may be still some other questions coming in, and we haven't seen those yet. But you will be given a chance to respond to those, and at the end of the event, you'll also be given 2 minutes to make closing remarks. We did have a drawing of cards before we started to determine the order of presentation for the first 5 minutes, and then as we go through each question, we will alternate. We will alternate to the next person in line and keep rotating so that the same person won't be first or last every time. We hope everyone can keep this on a friendly basis. I see no reason why that will not happen tonight. Ken Phillips was out front. I thought he was coming in, but apparently has declined to participate. Do you have any questions as the candidates right now before we begin? All right, if not, are they in the order that we drew the cards?
Yes.
So Ed is first. All right, let us begin with your 5-minute presentations. Somebody get the clock going on this guy so they don't get running over time. Ed Ross.
Well, I don't think this will take 5 minutes. But basically, you want to know why I want to run for city council. I've always been involved in the city of Rockford. I've always served on numerous boards. When I moved to Rockford, when Laurie and I moved to Rockford in '93, started out as just a little t-ball coach and met some friends in town that got me involved with what's called the JCs. Got to meet a lot of great people in Rockford and was always involved in what happens, what was going on here in Rockford for many years through the JCs, and then graduated on to other clubs, members of, right now I'm a member of the Lions and also the Rockford Foundation. I've served on a lot of different boards throughout all the years. One of the things I've always enjoyed is just the spirit of Rockford as a community. When something happens, people get together. Been with the Relay for Life for about 15 years right now. That is my voice that's keeping me awake at night all the way through the evening. Myself and Randy Kirchhoff do the entertainment at the Relay for Life. But one of the things I just really enjoy is just simply the community that we have and what we've developed over the years. I've seen Rockford, when I came to Rockford, back then with the JCs, we used to pick up the trash once a year around the town. It was a very fun Saturday that we probably had about 30 or 40 people go around and say, okay, everybody that's got extra stuff that they just simply can't get rid of, let's get that out on the street, and the JCs will come by and pick that up. Well, as Rockford has grown, as you've all seen, that was something that was eventually taken over by the city. We hired some people to actually come in, hired a couple different waste management companies to come in and take care of that because it was just too much for the JCs. And now that program's ended because the city's just expanded so much. And that's something that's that we need to keep an eye on. Our growth is really, really, really important. As Rockford grows, we're reaching out to other borders out there. We're going to be having some pretty big developments coming into our community that we need to have some thoughtful consideration as to how we're going to handle those things. So I just like being involved. I think I'm a very good person that when a situation comes up, I'll look at all sides of that situation, make an informed decision, and would serve the community well in those types of things.
Thank you, Ed. Jeff Lewis.
Hi, Jeff Lewis. I'm here tonight because a month or so ago, my wife said to me, "You'd have to be crazy to run for the city council." So here I am. Anyway, I'm just glad to be here. We moved to Rockford in 1985. We didn't really live in Rockford at the time, but you could throw a rock from our backyard and hit Rockford. We were right in the Rockford
Hopefully
village.
you didn't do that.
But back then there wasn't anything there. Now I think I would hit Family Fair or something. I worked at Wolverine Worldwide for a number of years, so I was involved in the city in a lot of different ways through the early years. about 14 years ago this week, I opened my own business in Rockford. I have a marketing and consulting company called Fluis, and was fortunate enough to be able to get involved in some Rockford community sorts of events. Over the last several years, I've been able to work on with people at the Chamber of Commerce, with businesses downtown, with community groups and school groups, and just really love this city. We worked on a Rockford First campaign for a number of years, and it was really a great thing to look at a city that had a commitment and a desire to grow, and a group of citizens and services and businesses that worked together and were pushing things forward, and just to kind of work to define those sorts of things. I remember that one of the first ads we ran was a picture of a bunch of cars backed up on Alpine Avenue, and it said something like, Alpine Avenue has a lot of traffic, and underneath it had a picture of Rockford, and it said, "Good for them." And we just love this city, and it's great to see the things that have happened in the city, and to me, the way that it's grown over the last 35 years. I said to a lot of people that, when we moved here in 1985 in downtown Rockford, there were 3 places you could buy rubber dog poop, but there aren't any anymore. You can't find it. You have to use that emoji on your phone now. Anyway, I love the city, and I think the thing that inspired or impressed me to work in the city is that there's just a need for good and inclusive government. We seem to be devolving as a society into people that have to take a side and to fight whatever it is that we don't agree with. And I'm not sure that I agree with that, but I won't fight you if that's your opinion. I think that there's consensus everywhere, whether you're a business owner in town, whether you own property or you live within the boundaries of the city. We can work together, and we can come up with solutions, and we have, fortunately, in this land, a constitution that supports a whole lot of things and allows a whole lot of things to work together. I feel like I'm a forward thinker and a consensus builder. I feel like we can have, through good communication and through open involvement of the citizens like you and of good and strong people, we can make great things continue to happen in the city. And I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff Light.
Welcome. My name is Jeff Light. I've been in the city for, I want to say, 24 years now. I grew up in the city of Flint, and when we moved over here, I couldn't believe that a place like Rockford existed. I had some friends come over about a month after we'd arrived, and I was driving through downtown, and somebody waved at me, and I waved, and he said, "Who's that?" I don't have any idea. They all wave, just wave at them. Everybody's really happy for some reason, so that was my initiation here. So I really never gave any thought to running for the city council. I've been on the planning commission, worked with the city, been pretty involved with the city over the years on various things, including Relay for Life, which my wife was a really big part of. But I heard there was a little shortage of candidates leading right up to the end, and I thought I'd throw my name in there to help bolster the roster a little bit. So I guess I would say I don't think you're in a position here where you have anybody that's not going to be able to do the job for you. So I'm certainly not a game changer, but thought we'd do my duty, I guess would be the thing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Tammy Bergstrom.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my background too. I've been in Rockford since sometime prior to 1985, and my background is as a reporter, journalist, and I worked for a number of publications covering a lot of municipal government. I'm originally from the Upper Peninsula. I started my career up there. I moved down here to West Michigan and worked at the Advance newspapers. And at that time, the glory days of print journalism, the Advance newspaper used to be a really great, nice newspaper. And to fill that newspaper every week, we covered local municipal government. And I had a Northern Kent County beat. I covered Spencer Township, Nelson Township, Cortland Township, Plainfield Township, Cannon Township, Sparta Township, Village of Sparta, City of Cedar Springs, just so I really got a front row seat, literally a front row seat to watching local government. And although in my 20s and maybe early in my career, some of those meetings were frightfully dull and long. Plainfield Township was notorious for meeting at least 4 hours every Monday night. And I realized later that it really instilled an interest in me in local government, and also an appreciation for those who serve in local government. I'm sure many, if not all of you, know that Rockford City Council is not a compensated position, so everyone who serves is essentially a volunteer. And going to a board, to a council meeting, maybe a couple times a month, and work sessions is a real labor of love. When I was a stay-at-home mom, after I had some kids, and I was working for one of the local newspapers, Michael Young asked me if I would serve on the Board of Review, if I would consider serving on the Board of Review, which I was happy to do. I did that for 12 years, and during that time, I believe it was Jim Scales who asked me to serve on the Rockford Planning Commission, and I was very honored to do that. I did that for 13 years. And then when some of our longtime council members decided not to run for council in 2012, I thought, well, maybe this is an opportunity for me to be one of those people that I have admired over the years. And I ran, and to my surprise, I was elected. And I served for 4 years. I enjoyed it greatly. And I left. I decided not to run in 2016 for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was I have an elderly mother who was living in Texas at the time and had recently lost her husband. But I'm happy to say she's back in Michigan now, and things are well with her, and so I'm looking forward to hopefully being active again. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Good sign, nobody took their whole 5 minutes, so we won't be here too long tonight. That's a good sign. Let's start with the questions, and some of these questions are variations of the same ones that we used 4 years ago, and some are brand new. First question I want to ask is, you may or not be aware that the Rockford Library Board and the City of Rockford have purchased property next to the existing Krause Library. The city owns the Krause Library building, but it's staffed by Kent District Library. And there is a discussion now about setting up a board which includes representations from the area townships, because 80% of the use of that library is by township residents rather than city representatives. That is an issue of city sovereignty and some other things. We'd like to hear your thoughts on that prospect, what you think it does or shouldn't do for the citizens of Rockford. Jeff, you go first.
Well, I would be worried that if we had people from other townships coming into Rockford and running on the library board, that civil disrupt, so that the society as we know it could come to an end. I'm not really sure that I'm very concerned about that. Now, if they wanted to come and take over, an Xbox gaming room or something, then maybe there would be more of a battle, but we thrive when there are varieties of opinions and varieties of ways to work together. I love the way that the communities here over the last several years have worked. For example, with the Planning Commission and the zoning, to be able to create a corridor that's maintained a charm for the community and maintain this downtown Rockford area. And I would hope that this commission also would look at what we have, what that space is there, what the opportunities would be to have a library. It would be great to have more space, and great to be able to have something to serve the needs of the community. The library is busy on days when it's not busy, and I would think that we would support that. I would think that there would be some discussion about the funding and how those other townships contribute and how we work together between the townships and the library. But it sounds to me like it's something that would be a win-win, not only for us, but for the other communities that would be participating in it.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff Light?
I'd agree with Jeff. I don't see that being a problem really. I've got a lot of friends that consider themselves to be Rockford people that don't live in the city, more of the community as a whole. And so I don't think it would be a bad thing in any way to have people that are using it to that extent have some say in where the direction goes.
Tammy?
Well, the library is very near and dear to my heart. As you know, Neil, I lived on the same block as the library for 20 years, and I just love being able to, maybe early in the morning walk over in my robe slippers and throw a book in the room. And it's my neighbor's house, I think, or my former neighbor's house, that is going to be used for the expansion. It's my understanding, and I could be wrong, but that the property and the building are owned, of course, by the city of Rockford. I think
That's correct.
programming maybe is separate from that, but the actual property is the city of Rockford. So I guess I would assume that the relationship would be that the city of Rockford would still be owner of the physical property, and these other municipalities would have input as to programming and possibly funding and those sorts of things. I agree with Jeff that I think it would be nice to have representation from the outlying townships. Where I grew up, I was in an outlying township, but we certainly used our city library, and that just seems natural and like a good way to go.
Thank you, Jeff. Ed?
When we first moved to Rockford, we actually lived right next door to the library like Tammy did. And that's how Tammy and I got to know each other, and her two sons actually hung out with our two sons. I used to joke around that we lived very close to the library and our children would utilize it, and my wife would quite frequently. We would also get late fees, and we could literally throw a book at the library and hit it. So I have no idea why we would get late fees, but I would always complain a little bit about that, but we're always happy to support it. I actually serve on a board right now that works with all the townships of the Rockford Foundation, and it's a community organization, and it's a grant organization where we take basically a foundation that started out with just $2,000 and built up to over $700,000, I believe, right now. And working with the other townships is very easy. And I would believe that any representative that came from other townships that wanted to have a heart for our library and what happens to our library would be good representatives and would be people with a good vision for what needs to happen with our library. So the fact that we're seeing an 80% utilization from other townships just shows that they need to have some input on what happens with the library. And I agree with the other board members.
Thank you. Next question is, what are your thoughts about future residential development in Rockford? And as part of that, do you believe there is a need for greater diversity in our residential offerings? Jeff Light, you're first.
Greater diversity in the residential offering? I have no problem with expansion of residential. I think if you're up by me in the Highlands, it's almost overwhelming how much building is going on and how much space is yet to be filled up there. I don't know exactly where else we have the room to carry on at this point, but yeah, I'm certainly all for growth, and I do think we have a need for senior housing and even senior care. The one up by Meyer, I think, fills a need, but along those lines, I would say, yeah, for sure, we should take a look at, and we've tried for how long now, but yeah, I think obviously I have no issue with it.
Pam?
I think we have, in the course of the 35 plus years that I've lived in Rockford, we certainly have seen a lot of growth. Dr. Scheidler and I were talking just prior to the meeting tonight about that phenomenal growth. I remember when the high school had been, the high schools the school, yeah. I can remember at an early Rockford meeting with some developers up what is now the outskirts of the Highlands, and that was wilderness, basically. So I think we have, and I think there has been some annexation of property over the years from Algoma, for example. It's not something that I have a driving desire to see, but you know, when there's a natural progression of that and it makes sense for more property to come into the city, we've, I think, always done a good job of making that happen and accommodating that. As far as diversity of housing, we probably currently have pretty good diversity. I mean, I think we have, you know, a variety of incomes, variety of, you know, some certainly fabulous, beautiful homes, as well as some more modest homes. Senior housing, of course, is going to be an issue as, you know, with an aging population, people living longer. I think condominium development is a nice fit for Rockford. I think there's traditionally been some hesitation for apartment-style housing. I wouldn't say that's necessarily, you know, something that we never want to see. You know, if it was the right development, I think that would work. So I guess my thoughts are that I think we do have pretty good diversity of housing right now, and I'm certainly open to looking at, you know, other types of housing, which, you know, the way the world is changing, who knows what it's going to be. We might have a bunch of tiny homes somewhere.
Thank you, Tammy. Ed?
You know, making sure that you have safe and affordable housing for just every walk of life is really important for any community to be a whole community. You simply can't just simply appeal to one class of individuals and think that your community is going to be a whole community. We have different types of housing, and we have Harvest Hill, which is, actually I work for rural development and actually worked with that, which is low to moderate income housing, and it makes it more affordable for people to live in this community and be a part of this community until their income grows and they can move out of that type of thing. So you really need to not just look at just having expensive houses for everybody every time you put up a new project. You need to look at housing that can simply appeal to every walk of life, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's kind of a sweet spot for me because I am in housing, and I actually worked for rural development for several years before I got into individual mortgages. And it was where my heart was as far as making sure that we took care of all walks of life. So making sure that, you know, I just simply have houses that are $200,000, but have houses that are $100,000, or houses that are $300,000. It makes for a great community because if you go downtown and you go to any of the places where they employ a lot of people, you'll find out that a lot of the workers that work there are coming from Wyoming, are coming from different areas that you wouldn't think. There's one person I know that works at the Royal River Tavern that drives an hour to get here. And our businesses can't sustain themselves unless they have people that are looking, you know, young people that are looking to take jobs that are affordable. So for them at that point in their life. So I think you need to draw on every aspect of life when you're looking at housing. That's the easiest way to say it to you.
Thanks, Ed. Jeff?
I spoke to somebody a while back concerned that there was a lot of new building going up and that Rockford was changing and that Rockford, you know, we have a heritage and we need to keep things the way they are. And I talked to them about the house that we've moved into. We renovated a house on Main Street a few years ago. It's about 3 doors north of the Rockford Footwear Depot. And it's in a place where I said, you know, 30 years ago, there was a train running through the backyard here. And 10 years ago, or up to 10 years ago, there was a tannery that we were downwind of. So when it fumed, that would blow toward the northeast or where we are. And the people at Wolverine used to call that the smell of money when I worked there, but we called it something different. So And I thought, it's a really great thing about a community is that the charm of a community like Rockford, I think, is the way that it evolves and the way that we look at it, look at taking and watching that change and watching how it grows. I can tell you that on our street, we've had this summer 2 houses that were built that were neither beige nor gray. So there's some diversity right there that you could talk about. But I'm just kidding. I mean, I think that we can't shut the door to what's happening, but at the same time, if we've got a good city manager with a vision and we've got a planning commission that understands not just what's going on today, but an idea and an eye for what can be or could be in the future, and things are put into place, the city will grow and evolve the way that it should, and we'll have good growth, and we'll maintain that heritage and that charm and that inclusiveness, whatever that looks like when the future comes forward.
Thanks, Jeff. The other Jeff. Did I start with you on this? You want to try it again? No, all right. Thanks. Along the same area, and this I guess you start with Tammy, not just residential, but including residential, what areas of the city provide the greatest opportunity for development or redevelopment?
Are we talking about a physical area of the city?
Take any way you want to go with it. Yes, but I think that's what we're talking about, is the structures that are there, existing structures or places where we still have some vacant land.
No.
How would you like to see that developed, or the existing structures, are there some that
Skate
need
park.
to be redeveloped?
Well, maybe we're talking about, the really big vacant piece of land where Wolverine formerly was, let's just say that. I've heard a number of ideas talked about over the years. One thing I have heard is, Rockford needs a hotel. Whether that, a boutique place, hotel there. But, frankly, I kind of threw the skateboard comment out there as a lighten things up a little bit. But, maybe some form of recreation that does attract people, not only attract people to downtown, but that does serve our current population. I think we need to evolve a little bit to, the 21st century, and what our kids are enjoying now might not be the same things that we all enjoyed when we were growing up. Things have changed a little bit. I don't have any strong thought that this is a perfect place for this, that, or the other thing, but it certainly is a prime area of Rockford. It's right downtown. Perhaps some form of housing. We have the condo development on North Monroe. Does that lend itself to, residential? Maybe some aspect. It's a big piece of property. I'm just kind of thinking out loud actually here, but there again, it's on the river. It is adjacent to our downtown. I guess I feel like it needs to be more of a public space, or to have a public aspect to it, at least some form of that. Talking about other development, and this kind of tails a little bit on the last question. I see these beautiful homes being built in Rockford, and on 10 Mile, somebody has renovated what used to be a very tiny and modest home into what looks like it's going to be something much more glorious, right? As well as another beautiful home that was built there. And we probably do have some aging housing stock in Rockford that is getting to be prime for that sort of redevelopment. That's something that the city, the planning commission, the zoning administrator is probably going to be spending some time on in the next few years. That's all I can think of right now.
Thank you. Ed?
I guess I would agree with what Tammy said. I think that there are some aging homes in the community that developers will take an opportunity to rehab and bring back to a full life, and that'll be exciting to see. And if there's an assistance that the city can do in making things easier for them, and I think it's something that we should want to do as a community, because if you have decent housing, then you have decent people. Same thing too is that the Wolverine area, I think everybody in Rockford that walks downtown or goes by it is hoping one day that will get developed. And I could see something there, a combination of both housing and shops and things like that, that would be very beneficial to, I can't imagine that if you built something that was overlooking the river as far as housing, that it would be gobbled up pretty quickly by those who wanted it. But also other shops that, to expand our retail area downtown would be very beneficial for all the community. And that would be a great opportunity for everybody. Whether that'll happen or not, just depends on how we work together as a community and how we look at that land, because I know we've had some issues with that, and that's very, very real situation that we have to find a way to come together and make sure that, that if we work with that, Wolverine will want to be part of that, rather than say, no, we're not gonna do anything, or we're not gonna allow something to happen there.
Yeah.
I think this is an exciting time to have a problem, or not a problem, to have an opportunity like this with things that are happening in the environment, in the community. You know, there's a blight of shopping centers in the country. I've heard numbers, I think like 1,300 shopping centers will be gone within the next 5 years, that they can't survive. But the exciting thing is the creativity and the ideas that people are using to think how to repurpose and what you do for developing a mixed use community. I know that when I was a kid in Detroit, they opened a big, huge regional thing that everybody went to, and you'd have brunch at the Hyatt Regency on Sunday morning, and they had a Lord and Taylor and all these shops in it, and the mall failed. But what's happened at that now is that Ford has taken over one of the wings of the mall, and they have something like 2,500 employees now that they've set up that work in that. They've got living areas and environments so that there are condos and housing. They've got parks built within indoor sorts of parks inside of this building, and they've created something that's becoming almost a community of its own. And when I think of that area downtown, and that they were planning a decade ago to put a strip of stores along the side of that, I just think we're in a great situation now to really look and think of creative ways to do things, whether that's a hotel or whether it's a skate park or it's a combination of things. We really are living in a time where where imagination could really allow us to do something that would be vibrant and good for the community.
Jeff? Jeff, what?
I think we're all on the same page here. I'm loving, I guess maybe it's an inventory issue with housing, but even the three that were just put up at the entrance to the industrial park, and the houses, as I make my loops through town, that are being bought and totally renovated, I think is fabulous. I think it's going to continue. You look at, like out on Boswick Lake, where they're tearing down $450,000 houses to build one for $1.5 million, and I think we're going to see some of the older houses in Rockford either go through those tear downs or at least be renovated. I think that's fabulous. I do remember, I think you were there when we had a proposal put forth for that Wolverine property. Was it Orion, Dave? Or that was, I thought, just spectacular. It had retail on the bottom, condos on the upper floors, and green space. They were talking about the amphitheater, if I remember, and walking trails back behind there. And if we can get something like that, 'cause it used to be the Birch Body Works that we talked about every time we walked into the chamber, and now it seems to be what's going on there. And I know obviously there's some issues there that have to be worked out, but I almost think Traverse City, like when what we saw there, where you got the, retail, and then condos or apartments up above it. So anybody that can get a place where they can walk into downtown and utilize it is thrilled with the idea.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to take one out of order now from, it's one that was brought in by participants tonight, or the audience tonight, because it relates especially to the Wolverine property that you're talking about. This, I think we start with Ed this time, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. How important do you feel environmental concerns are to the city of Rockford, considering the recent PFAS crisis? How do you think accurate communications to the citizens should be handled, and in particular with this Wolverine site?
Well, as far as PFAS is concerned, our water supply, if it ever became damaged, would be detrimental to all of us, the community and the businesses around us. It's very important that we have clear, what's the term I'm looking for here, I'm sorry guys, that we're very clear and transparent in what's going on in any of these types of things, especially when you talk about contamination. When something's going on, citizens need to be made known of that. So I don't think that we should hold back anything at any time or keep it in committee or anything like that. If it's something that affects the citizens should know about it. And with the Wolverine site, I know and have read that multiple testings have been done out there, and when they were tearing down the building to try to ensure that citizens wouldn't be harmed, and they did, from what I understand, a little bit more than what they were minimally required to do. So my understanding is that Wolverine was doing what it should do, and maybe a little bit more at the time when they took down that building. And hopefully, if we were to develop that land, we would first ensure that it's not contaminated. Obviously, we don't want to. The funny thing about contaminated land in my life is that I actually went to an elementary school that was built on a city dump. And by the time I got to 6th grade, glass was coming up through the playground. So I'm very aware of my own little personal experience, what it's like to have stuff that was not properly taken care of. By the time I was done with high school, that school was closed down for contamination. And I've always wondered how that affected myself and my classmates from being the first class that actually went through that entire school. So it's very important that we take the proper steps to ensure if that site is ever developed, that it is developed safely for the citizens that might reside there, or even just utilize it, whether it be for anything, whether it's a skate park or whether it's residential, whether it's for retail. We want to make sure that it's done right.
Yeah.
That was like right out of a Dickens novel. that was just.
I still got the scar on my knee. You couldn't. I mean, you talk about the slide. The slide is the
Glass coming up out of the playground.
What's
Okay, well, my take on the PFAS is probably close to everybody else's in here. Whether or not I'm directly affected psychologically, it's a blow. I think it's, a blow every time that we hear something about it, or the community, or there's some article and they say that's been discovered here, it was also discovered in here in Rockford, and that it runs the risk of being something that defines us, rather that we rise up together to figure out how to, or what to do about that. And I couldn't agree more with Ed when he said there needs to be transparency. And we need to have transparency on all sides on an issue like that. I think that there's been trust that's been violated, and I will say that, when I went to work in 1985 at Wolverine, they had this presentation they would make with Scotchgard, and they had a little kit, and they would say this stuff is safe enough to drink, and there was no idea that there was anything bad about that. And I'm sure when all of those people who lived in this city, when these things were happening, they were affecting themselves. if there had been any sort of danger, I'm not sure that we would be seeing that nearby. They would have maybe, I just feel like they lived in a time before chemistry caught up with the things that were happening. And I feel like that the Wolverine has been operating as a good citizen to try to clear up and to remedy the situation that's there. But, you know, if there's any sort of deliberate act of ecological damage, of course people should be held accountable, and we have the right to be able to know that and to question decisions that have been made. And in the development of what goes on downtown, should be the same sort of, I agree with Ed that we make sure that things are clean, things are clean and things are clear and things are built in a way that everybody learns from that mistake. But I don't think there's going to be a solution while we're all pointing fingers. There becomes a solution when we get to the point where we can work together and ensure that the right things happen in the right way.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with both these guys. Transparency, I think, is really important. Vigilance on the city's part. You know, every time I open the paper, it seems like we're finding another hot spot, and I know everybody's wondering what's going to be next. I'm the same way. But I think we, you know, when we have all the information, and I think they're still in the midst of all that, then we work with the agencies, whoever that may be, that needs to handle the cleanup and make sure that it's done correctly and then move forward.
Yeah.
Well, it certainly was a blow to find out how much contamination there was on the Wolverine property and in the river, because certainly the river is a large part of Rockford, and it's wonderful. I mean, you know, I know, Neil, you grew up here and played there, and you know, many of us use the river kayaking or whatever, and it's just gorgeous. The dam is wonderful. So it was a blow to find out what those contamination levels are. I'm going to assume that, you know, the agencies that are involved, as well as the city, is working to be sure that things are, you know, we find out, you know, the level of contamination, and it will be remediated in some way. I also think that, as Jeff said, you know, you can't open up a newspaper or go online and read something without finding out there's another place, because this chemical is rather ubiquitous throughout the United States. So I don't think there's any reason for Rockford in particular to, you know, feel any kind of sense of shame or embarrassment about this, because it's just something that happened that is being taken care of. Other communities are dealing with the same thing, or will be dealing with the same thing in the future. One thing I would point out, however, is, you know, the stories certainly do seem to be sensational, or could be looked at that way. I think that the city of Rockford should do more to communicate to the residents on a regular basis. This is what's going on. Many of us work out of town, so we're not tied into maybe some of the social clubs where this may be getting discussed. I happen to be on another nonprofit organization that meets the same night as the city council currently, so I'm not at city meetings, council meetings. But I think residents like me would like to hear more from the city. What is going on? Where are we now? Even if it's just a, you know, a brief update of, yes, the EPA is down there and they're drilling or testing, and they're, you know, this is the next step. The health department is involved in this fashion, or the DEQ is involved in this fashion. I think the lack of information causes people to think, you know, maybe worse than what the actual situation is. So I would advocate that there ought to be more communication about what's going on here in the city of Rockford with regard to PFAS.
Thank you. Back to business questions. There's a diverse offering of businesses in our downtown area right now, which helps create it as a destination shopping area. Do you support an ordinance that would place limits on the types of businesses that could occupy the storefronts within the downtown area? Jeff first this time.
I had put in my, my written reply to the Rockford Forward group that I love living in a town that has 4 different kinds of ice cream within a 2-block area. I think that you look at the economic, you would look at the economic benefit and the economic detriment to such a situation. I'm not sure that Rockford is going to thrive being, you know, all restaurants in Jade, and I don't think that it's going to conversely thrive if we decide that everybody's going to, you know, open one sort of thing or another. There's a diversity of business, I think, that makes a community strong. And if you look at what's happened in Rockford over the last few decades, like a lot of small towns, in the past, when there was the migration out of cities into strips and centers and things, you'd find, and this is not negative, but you'd find more service industries moving into downtown spaces, and you'd find a diversity of businesses that don't necessarily all appeal to shopping. They're a destination, or they're an in and out kind of a business. But as the economy grows and as the city builds an identity, and as there's success in business areas, you can see that there's been naturally over the years a return to Rockford, where many service businesses that were downtown now have found locations that are just outside of the main downtown area. I look at the State Farm building, or Denise McGilsey, who had Main Street, Cortlandt Street locations that have moved now to houses outside of that main retail area. And I think that's something that naturally occurs. It seems like Rockford has a healthy mix of retail and restaurants right now. And living downtown, it's really a thrill to me to go somewhere and see people walking down the street, in the summertime at 9:30 at night, that there's traffic and there's busy people, and there's people conversing and looking and enjoying themselves. And I think that, we look at the quality of the community. I don't know that that's something that there needs to be an ordinance for, unless it's deemed to be some sort of a detriment or a nuisance to the public in general.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think that would be a slippery slope. Is you want businesses that are going to thrive as retail space becomes more in demand. The office space is probably going to move out into a cheaper location as their rents start to go up. But I would leave that to the businesses, I think. If somebody wants to put a place downtown, they're gonna, hopefully have given that a lot of thought to whether or not it can make it down there or not. And I wouldn't want to see, there's some things in, let's say, on South Division that I don't think would fit down there. And so in that case, we may have to take a hard look at it, but I would really let the businesses make that decision.
Tammy?
Well, we don't often have the opportunity to dictate, although we do occasionally, because I do remember when we were talking about the promenade, for example. We had a whole list of businesses. I can't remember what any of them are, maybe like massage parlor or something like that, where we said, this would be appropriate or not. So there is occasionally opportunity, but I agree, retail things have changed so much over the year. I know, for example, when you talked about malls across the country, demalling, or, with the advent of online shopping, what used to be considered a kind of a negative business, like a massage place or a Delta Dental or whatever, really didn't want those in your mall, now you do want them because that does require people to come in and that's foot traffic who are then going to go to the other shops in the area. Rockford has a relatively small downtown area. You know, I grew up here when the hardware was on Main Street and, you know, we were there a lot. Now it is a lot of retail shops. I can't say that I frequent a lot of them, but you know, some of them that I like, and I think about them a couple years later and I want to go back there, it's like they're not there anymore because they couldn't afford to stay. They, you know, their business didn't do well, or their, I don't know, their rents, whatever. It didn't make sense for them economically. So I think there is sort of a natural, you know, this is going to be successful and maybe this one isn't. There are certain businesses, you know, I wouldn't really want to see a vape shop or some of those places, but I don't know that that's something that as a council member, you know, I take a hard line on. I don't know that you could legally, except for those times when we have, I think it was under the PUD that we were able to kind of have some say in what sort of businesses we wanted there. I hope I answered that right.
Ed?
I agree with the other panel members. I don't think you can truly regulate how many ice cream shops or pizza shops, which I think we have even more pizza shops than we do ice cream shops anymore. I think there's 9 I counted probably within less than a mile where we are right now. Fatso's my favorite. Anyway, you can get a Scotch tape store maybe, I don't know. I really believe that businesses of themselves will either fail or succeed based on the service that they give. And there's been many times when people have thought of things that I thought, well, that won't work, and then it works really well. And so I don't think that I have the vision that sometimes that other people have, so I shouldn't be willing to tell them no when they have their heart and soul and their finances put into something that might be good for their particular love or interest or whatever. I remember when Uccello's came into town and said that we are going to serve food at 1 o'clock in the morning. I thought that was silly. No one in Rockford would be at Uccello's at 11 or 12 o'clock, and yet Sunday night I was watching the Lions football game at Uccello's at about 10:30. So I guess that, and having a sub sandwich. So it was nice to have some food because it was a late night for us, and it was nice to have something hot and ready prepared for me where a lot of shops have closed down. So I think that other people's vision, we should entrust them, that they're making good decisions, although I agree with Tammy, there are certain, a small segment of shops that I would have a hard time wanting to see in our community, and I'm not sure if we could legally do anything about that. But there was only a few types of things. I don't think we want I can't think of the word I'm thinking of here. So, something less desirable in our community in downtown area. Let's just leave it at that, okay?
Neil, can I add one more thing? As a resident, I find myself more, you know, I like when the hardware was on Main Street, especially since I lived a block away and we were at the hardware lot. But I also find myself, as a resident of Rockford, wanting to use the services shops. I'm at the sewing room all the time, getting something altered, and I know we have a lot of fine retail, but as a resident, I guess I'd like to see, we've talked about this before, I think, jeweler, that you can, get repair work done, those sorts of service shops. I'd like to encourage that. I don't know if our downtown real estate allows us to support a business like that, so maybe that is something for consideration.
Well, along that line, and hopefully not drawing the same issue out too far, you may be aware that the city owns the property that was formerly Northland Pontiac, right behind the museum and on Main Street across from Chase Bank. And that property is now being marketed by the city. What are your thoughts about the city doing that? And the aim is retail use, by my understanding. It's presently parking. Do you have any observations or comments about that procedure or whether that's proper? And I think it's Jeff this time, isn't it?
Nope.
No, it's this Jeff, that's right.
It's Jeff this time.
Yeah, that was last.
I love it. I think that's, not that we don't need the parking, and you know, I did get a little, when Rockford, I'm a contractor in the trades, and when the corner bar was going up, and all of those trade contractors were parking in front of the retail, just drove me out of my gourd. Hey, I would never let my guys do it, and you wouldn't get away with it anywhere else, so I digress, but I wanted to, for some reason I was thinking about the parking, so, but no, I think, yeah, I think that's the right thing to do. If we can gain some more retail, I think that's fabulous. If we may have to do something about parking at some point, and, you know, that'd be, interesting to see if it's being worked on in the upcoming plan, huh?
Tammy?
That's great to hear. I remember when Northland Pontiac was there, I lived, you know, just a block away. Yes, it's great to see a thriving Main Street, and even though I understand parking can be an issue, I'd much rather see a business than an empty parking lot or a full parking lot for that matter. And maybe since, you know, the city is the owner, you know, we certainly would have some say-so in the possible. I know there's been a push in the past to like have a destination, like this is going to draw people into Rockford, but maybe there could be some consideration given to, we want to make this affordable for the types of businesses that our residents would use on a daily basis. I mentioned the sewing and alteration shop, but certainly I wouldn't want to, you know, not that exact business, but maybe businesses similar to those would be something that we could look at marketing to, and maybe since the city is the owner, rental rates and would be something that we have some influence on.
Ed?
Yeah, I believe it's exciting. And it's exciting because growth brings out excitement within the community to see what's going on next. And any time you bring in something new, it also incites other, or motivates other sorry, losing the word there, other shops to make sure that they're developed well. And what I mean by that is, last year, unfortunately, the corner bar burnt down, and we all drove by and watched the development over the year. Some other shops, other restaurants in town watched that too, and they redesigned what they were doing. I know 2 restaurants in town that redesigned what they did, strictly because they knew that the corner bar was going to be new and exciting, and they wanted to be new and exciting too. So when you do something like that, it does create other development. And I think it would be a very good opportunity for the community. And I agree that, yeah, parking is a very big concern in our community, and it is something that the next board may have to look at, the next council will have to look at. We do want to have reasonable distance for people to walk and come downtown and be part of it, because it is frustrating for anybody in the community if you run out of parking spots. How many times you've been to a community where you got to drive around for 15, 20 minutes before you can find a spot, and that within itself is a turnoff to the people that want to be part of the downtown. So we do need to keep an eye on that too at the same time, but I do believe that's an exciting opportunity.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. Rockford, we used to talk about Rockford needing a destination shop, but I believe that what part of the evolution that we've seen over the past decade now is that Rockford is the destination, and it lifts all of the boats in the downtown area. And if the city has an opportunity to keep that sort of charm, you know, the last thing probably we need is a Pottery Barn. We need something that's going to build that and continue that joy and that feel. And yeah, I you know, I'll agree with the parking sort of thing, but you know, 15 years ago, there was parking in Rockford and none at Woodland Mall. Now, if you know, I have to take my medicine now.
I thought you said Pottery Barn.
Yeah. Okay, You know, now we have a vibrant community, and I think that, to Tammy's point, I would think that there'd be an opportunity to specify, if we're the lessors of this property, the kinds of businesses and the things that we would want to have in the area. Not a vape shop.
Next question, changing gears a little bit. City of Rockford, as you are well aware, sets the number of city council members at 5. That's from the original city charter many, many years ago, and the city in the last 20 years has increased by over 50%. In your opinion, does a 5-member city council still provide adequate representation, or should the charter be amended to increase it from 7 maybe to 7 or whatever, and why or why not? And we are at, yeah.
I agree. I've seen the, certainly I was here when I was adequate. We certainly have a lot more people. I think we could benefit from more people on the council.
Ed?
Yeah, actually within my responses to Rockford Forward, I had actually mentioned this, something I've actually been thinking about. I really believe that with the growth in Rockford, that we do need more representation. It gives a better opportunity for more discussion. It gives a better opportunity for more people to have a voice. And that's really important in our community, that we hear from different people. And so the more you open it up to having more people, it doesn't become just a simple small clique. It becomes something that you're hearing different perspectives from different walks of life, and that's very important.
Jeff?
I don't know. I don't want to be the first person not to agree with other people at the table.
Might be exciting.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
It'd be the first contentious
this
thing.
could be it, people. I would agree that representation is good, and I understand that the population of the city has increased, but I also would say that the landmass of the city has stayed relatively constant over that period of time, and I just wonder in the break of if things, is that the governing opinion, that we don't have enough opinion and enough point of view, and if so, is that something that should be addressed that could be addressed with a 5-person council and not a 7-person council? There's the old adage of herding cats, and there becomes a number somewhere where a governing body becomes more difficult to gain consensus at all. And so if something that I want to study carefully, I wouldn't say no about it, but I don't know that I would say yes right away without thinking a little more of the situation.
Jeff?
Offhand, I would say yes. I think that's probably a good idea with the population growth. 2 more people to corral that probably wouldn't be a bad thing either, so.
Next question. When you have a tough issue facing you, what is your decision-making process? And when presented with a problem or an issue on which you are required to take action? So, let's see, we're back to Ed.
Actually, when I have something that's difficult for me to look at, I really try to hear a lot of different voices. In other words, I seek counsel from people, whether the circumstance is something that someone's been in, or whether it's something that that is brand new to everybody. I want to hear a lot of different opinions and fact-based information. I think that's really what it comes down to. I kind of maybe come at things from more of a scientist point of view, where you've got to look at things based on fact, not on just personal feeling and thoughts, but I do want to hear a lot of different opinions when I'm looking at something that's pretty difficult to deal with. And I would probably seek the counsel of people who are directly involved with the circumstance, along with people who are maybe outside of the fringe that it may not affect at all. Because there are some people that will say, well, it doesn't really matter to me and that type of thing, but I still want to hear their point of view, as opposed to the people that it might most closely affect. So I think seeking a lot of counsel and then weighing it against facts. One of the things that when I was in college, I was kind of taught, and I think it's a very good thing when you're dealing with the difficult stuff, is that you make a list of pros and cons on any circumstance. You know, what's the positive side and what's the negative side? And then if you're seeking counsel on those things, you want to hear where those things are weighing in for a lot of people, and then make your decision based on that. I don't think that I'm one person that, when I'm representing a community, that would say that I have all the answers, or I would say that my opinion is the right opinion. I could not so much be swayed, but I could disagree with something I might vote positively for. I may not personally like it, but if I believe it's in the benefit of the community, I would still stand by that decision.
Jeff?
We've used the word transparency a lot this evening, but I think that there, in a difficult situation, needs to be an open and honest exchange that people, parties that are involved in a decision or might be affected by the decision should know, and should know that and have the opportunity to listen on the front end. I found in my experience, and like Ed, I like to talk to a lot of people, but I found in my experience that it's very hard to find people that hate each other when they're sitting across the table or they're sitting together or breaking bread together. It just doesn't happen. We have more things in common than we could possibly have apart from each other. And there come times when you need to make a decision and go and decide one way or the other. And those things, I think, they come down to an intuition, to a perception of what happens, to what people are saying. I have started a Facebook page where I can put some comments about the election here. I tell you all this so that you can run home and see that if you go to that page, there's absolutely nothing on it. I'm a blank slate at this point, but I want to listen, and I would want to have a venue available and a place where people could talk and there could be an interchange, and it wouldn't have to be a nasty interchange, and there wouldn't have to be any pictures of cats. It would just be a way to find a consensus. I really believe that's possible. I don't know a person in the city that I don't respect or just flat out like. It's just the way that this is, and so many times I've seen things that happen in the city where there's contention, that when you get right down to it, somewhere near the beginning of the situation, there was a misunderstanding, and a misunderstanding that kind of split and caused a rift and caused some doubt or some I don't know, acrimonious kind of behavior one toward another. I think that clear communication, being completely transparent, and listening to everyone's opinion, not going in with a preformed decision is the key.
Yeah,
Can I maybe repeat that question?
you can. I knew somebody was going to ask me that. As a council member, you will be, excuse me, get the right question here. What is your decision-making process when presented with a problem or on an issue on which you are required to take action?
Okay. This will be pretty short comparatively, I think. I'd like to say that I listen to both sides, keep an open mind, and try and be as pragmatic as possible.
Right, Tammy?
So, as a former council member, we certainly did have to make a certain amount of decisions, and the process that I think many of us used was multi-phased. We relied on our very competent city manager to provide a lot of the background, a lot of the legwork. There certainly are rules and regulations that you're bound by where they're there. You don't have a choice one way or the other. But as everyone else has said, I think transparency, listening to all the parties involved, and being respectful of all the different opinions that are brought forth are part of the decision-making process. And then I think to each one of us, I know certainly myself, we all bring our experience as a resident of Rockford and people we know who who, you know, may influence us or at least, you know, talk to us about certain matters. And I think, you know, I would bring that to the process as well to make the best decision, you know, that I felt was for the best of the community.
Thank you. All right, the question I started asking, you want me to repeat it? As a council member, you will be appointed to act as a liaison between your colleagues on the council and different community boards and/or commissions, such as the DDA, the EDC, the Planning Commission, Board Review, Library Board, etc. This is a three-part question. Have you served as any of these boards? And if elected, which one would you have an interest of serving on? And will your schedule allow you to attend those meetings of the commission? I think we're at Jeff this time.
I served on the Arts Commission when it was a commission, but the others I would not. I would be interested in being involved in the Planning Commission, in the Library Board. Those would be the three commissions, and really wherever I'm asked to serve. If there's a need.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yes, I'm old. I have no friends.
Medicine, too.
Right, and unless I don't take the medicine, and then yeah.
Yeah.
I'm currently on the planning commission, and you know, I really enjoy that. It's been a great group of people. I wouldn't mind sticking with that. You wouldn't want me on any type of an arts commission. I can't draw a stick man, so yeah, I'd probably want to hang around there.
I have served on the Planning Commission, as well as the Board of Review. Actually, as a council member, though, I don't believe you're allowed to serve on the Board of
Board
Review.
reviews.
Jeff took mine too. Planning Commission and Library Board, I think, are two areas that I'm very interested in. But, you know, going along with my early experience as a journalist, I wasn't always interested in, you know, sewer and water issues and those sorts of things. So I think I'd be willing to serve on just about any of the commissions.
Ed?
I've not served on any of those commissions, although I've served on some other things that the community has put together, represented in the Sojourn statute that we put together and stuff like that. So I would say that probably the downtown development would be my best. I can see myself in the arts too, but maybe not so much the planning commission. So that would not be what my heart is.
We're going to wrap up. We're over time a little bit, but we only have two more questions, so we're going to go through those. Let me ask the next one of all of you. Are you familiar with the Rockford City budget and the millage rates? And if so, do you have any observations about that? Jeff?
I'm not terribly familiar with that. I think I responded that that would be an area where I definitely need some work. I'm painfully familiar with budgets through the business and planning and tax planning, sadly. So yeah, I would have some work to do there, but I can get up to speed pretty quickly on that, I think.
Yeah.
Was it just familiar with the budget process?
And do you have any observations on our present budget and finances?
I am familiar. You know, as a former journalist, that was one of the stories that we would have to cover every year is, you know, going through the budget and ask questions about what things were happening. And I have gone through the budget process as a former council member. No real observations. I know the city struggles every year with, you know, we aren't getting any money from the state to speak of. I know that, you know, property values are important. As a former board review person, that's a large part of our base. The cities, I think, in my tenure, I mean, and prior to being on the council, covering it, the cities has been well managed, and I think we, you know, we owe that to Michael Young certainly, and Daryl DeLabio before him. They've done a great job. We've always had a really good city manager and good city staff that did a great job there. I think what Michael and Chief Jones did with the consolidation of services was a great step. my understanding is that the city of Rockford is in a kind of an enviable position maybe as far as retirements and money that we have, not just in the general fund, but, you know, what you might call a rainy day fund. So we're in good fiscal shape, and I realize that that's hugely important in one of our main tasks as city council, to be sure that we remain in good fiscal shape.
Okay.
I am familiar with budgets. I have my own business, so I have to do that quite frequently, and also I run a household, so that's very important too. But I have actually have taken time to sit down with our finance person and go over our budget, not in this particular recently, but on my last time. I have a good understanding of where our funds come from, and would educate myself even further on that. Do I have a complete grasp of it? I would say no, not at this time, but could get up to speed relatively quickly. And it is an area that I would watch closely, especially with millages and stuff like that. I know that we had an increase recently that I heard from a lot of different people in our community. They didn't really enjoy that last increase. And I talked to people about making, you know, their taxes and stuff like that, and that is a soft spot for a lot of people. But I also have an understanding that you have to generate funds in order to keep a city like ours going, and you have to be clear and give people good responses so they can have an understanding of where our funds are going. And that was something that I would always make myself apprised of as a city council person, because I know that is something that is near and dear to many residents' hearts. They want to know where their money is being spent. And I'm sure that just on a casual day, you'd be asked that question, so you really need to be adversed on that. So.
And Jeff?
When I was on the Arts Commission, it was a commission of the city, and so we had a budget and work, and I understand the process of how the budget works, and working, you know, with Michael over the course of a number of years, I had an idea. I haven't been involved in city business for 4 years, so I can't say that I'm up to speed on that right now, but when I was involved in the budget things, I may not have understood the entire budget, but I know what an asset is, and I know what a debt is, and I can tell when the debts were higher than the assets, and we're going to pull those into line. So.
Last question, and in the interest of time, I'm going to give you the question, but ask that you then go into your 2-minute summary at the same time, so we can wrap that up. And before I ask that, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Rockford Schools and Dan, who's working here tonight, for being here and providing the facility. This is very comfortable for all of us and convenient, so I hope you've enjoyed it, and a special thanks to Dr. Scheibler for the effort you put in on this. The last question then, and I believe it's Tammy in reverse order from where we started the evening. Answer this question and then go into your summary. Do you think it's important for council members to make it a priority to vote unanimously at council meetings? That's a citizen submitted question.
No, I don't. I mean, certainly we want consensus, but, you know, there are differences of opinion. Majority vote will rule. So, no, I don't think that's terribly important. As long as we're listening to each other, people can still have differences of opinion, even after hearing all the facts. So, short answer there, no. As far as wrapping up here, I just want to finish up by saying, going back to my opening statements about being a journalist and covering various townships and municipalities in northern Kent County. When I first started at the Advance, I did cover all those outlying townships, but I didn't get the city of Rockford because the more senior reporters got to pick the beats that they wanted, and Rockford was always a very plum beat, and so I didn't get that until much later. And Rockford still is a plum beat. I moved here after covering the city of Rockford, and part of that is due to the fact that my husband had a business not too far away, but I really did fall in love with the community. I can remember driving on River Street when River Street was the only way you got onto 10 Mile before the bridge was there, but I just found the town to be very charming. We had lived outside of Sparta. I certainly was familiar with Cedar Springs, but Rockford was special, and Rockford is still special. I'd be proud to represent all of you. Thank you.
Jeff?
No, I actually would think that would be strange if we had a unanimous vote regularly. I think we need to have some difference of opinion. And thank you all for coming. I know you probably had nothing else to do on a Wednesday evening, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And thank you guys for coming as well. I think we had I don't think you're gonna swing and miss here with whatever we end up with, so. I guess in closing, I wouldn't be coming in as a single issue person or actually with any issue or preformed agenda. I guess I'm a Rockford guy now. I'm waving at people I don't know even when I'm not in Rockford. Yeah, thank you.
I think that if everyone had the goal of voting unanimously, it wouldn't matter if there were 5 members or 7 members or 30 members on the commission. I think that you vote according to what you believe is the best for the city, and that kind of segues into, we were asked on the questionnaire that was printed in the Squire last week, what are the 3 things that we're interested in? And I number 1 is just good government, and good government is a government that listens more than it talks, and that it is inclusive rather than exclusive in the way that it communicates with people, and it's fiscally responsible, and it has a clear vision for the future, and has somebody that can steer that vision while looking for the current needs of the community. And I think Rockford is a great city and has a heritage of that sort of thing. I am grateful to be a citizen in Rockford, and I am honored to sit at the table here with these 3, and I wish Ken was here. I sat with him at city council meeting last week, and he's a good man, and I think like Ed said, there are good people here. What I do think in looking at the audience today, with the exception of these 2 guys in the back over here, we've missed a whole demographic of people that are, there's not a nice way to say this without really just stepping on things. We could use a few millennials in the group. They're people, millennials 25 to 40, they're turning 40 now, are the majority and woefully underrepresented. So, I would say to you, if you know someone, have a neighbor or a child or someone else, I don't know how you get people involved in what's going on in the community, but it would be great if I weren't here and my son was in working on this sort of thing. I think that's something that would be great for us to figure out a way to reach out and to get some more involvement there. I would love to have your vote, but I also think that you're in good hands whatever happens in this election. Thanks.
Ed?
I would echo everyone else's board on this council election committee here. I would echo that no, I don't think that everybody voting the same way every time would be a good thing for our community. We need to have open and good discussion, and we need to have people that have opposing opinions respectfully, and that's okay. You can still disagree with somebody and then go out and have a cup of coffee with them afterwards. That's not the worst thing in the world. But I agree that with everybody else, that I don't think we always have to agree on everything. Doesn't mean we don't have to like each other or care about each other. I just agree about that. As far as final statement, I can't tell you how blessed I feel that my family ended up in Rockford in 1993. It was by circumstance. My brother was here as a state trooper. We got to find out about the community through 88 to 93, and ended up moving here. And it's been a great ride so far, and I really love everything that I've seen happen and been able to be a part of in this community. I developed some wonderful lifelong friendships in this community that will continue, and there are many of them out there. So one of the things I love about Rockford is as many of us know, that you can't really walk down Main Street without running into someone that you know, and that's a great thing, it really is. And I agree with everybody else that, yeah, we do, I would echo your sentiments that, yeah, we do need to draw in our younger crowd. I think that that's gonna be vital for our future. I think that was a very great point that you made there. And it's something that we need to think about as we move forward, but I'm just really happy that I was able to raise my children in this community. Many of them unfortunately have left at this point. We're hoping that we'll bring them back, or we'll lure them back somehow. I'm not sure how, but we'll do that. But at this point, I'm just grateful for this opportunity to run for city council. I think, as everyone else has said here, that you have very fine people that are all running for city council at this point, and people who are thoughtful and would make good decisions for our community, and that's a great thing. But I do ask for your vote as we'll come up forward in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you for your attention and courtesy tonight. I think you deserve a big hand, as well as our candidates.